Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's webinar organized by Funds for NGOs. Today's topic is creating visibility for startups in the non-for-profit sector. I want to thank each one of you for taking out time from your busy schedules. This webinar will run for 60 minutes, which includes a 45 minutes of presentation followed by a 15 minutes of Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A option on your webinar screen to post your question, and we will respond to them during the Q&A session. Let's begin with webinar objectives. The first objective is to understand the unique visibility challenges faced by not-for-profit startups, to identify practical low-cost tools, platforms to increase organizational visibility, to develop value-driven branding strategies that reflect the mission, to engage stakeholders and community partners to establish a public presence. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available in the video section of the Funds for NGOs premium website. And now allow me to introduce today's trainer, Dr. Christopher A. Johnson. Dr. Christopher is an award-winning journalist, editor, publisher, and business management consultant since the 1980s. He is also a former Commonwealth Nuffield Cambridge Press Fellow, Management Science Fellow, a certified Commonwealth Youth Worker, holder of an MBA in Marketing Management and a doctorate in Business Management. He is renowned for his tutorials in bid writing, business planning, leadership, marketing, and organizational development cum capacity building. He is both founding director of Global Entrepreneurial Development Services Limited and chair of Community Education Academy of Leadership. He supports economic and social policy initiatives in Africa, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and South Asia. Now, I kindly request Dr. Christopher to lead this session and share screen.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'd like to welcome you guys. So today we are focusing on another interesting topic, creating visibility for startups in the not-for-profit sector. It's one of the most remarkable areas for non-profit sector organizations like charities, as well as other non-governmental organizations. And today we would be looking at a number of features, a lot of what, whom, why, where. For example, we'll be looking at matters to do with visibility for the not-for-profit sector, understanding your audiences, crafting an authentic brand story, leveraging digital tools and media channels, looking at how the media can be engaged with inclusive or exclusive communities, looking at aspects of thought leadership, the way we reflect on leadership and management, how we amplify partnerships, and then, of course, how we go about measuring visibility. And so, why does visibility matter? Why is it so important for not-for-profit startups? A series of surveys and research activities were conducted between 2024 and 2025. And these pieces of research suggested that between 40 and 75% of not-for-profit sector organizations were visible on various aspects or types of social media platforms, be they Instagrams, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and other media platforms. If we look on the screen on the left-hand side, and then we looked at in the center of the screen, estimated impact in terms of percentile or percentage, and then we look at the explanation with sources, we will see the underlying factors that are responsible for digital presence, storytelling, building relationships, and professional identity. all of which are very vital to organizations that are interested in messaging. In relation to digital presence, it's estimated that three-quarters of all NGOs have a presence on social media platforms. I mentioned LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, etc. And they use these platforms to demonstrate or highlight or illustrate what is called a return on investment, or what is abbreviation known as ROI. In terms of storytelling, and storytelling is about anecdotal evidence, case studies, video diaries, oral communication feedback, between 60 and 70% of all not for profit sector organizations are interested in using storytelling for fundraising, applications, tenders, etc. And according to Forbes research in 2025 in the United States, it stated that storytelling, or I should say strategic storytelling, was a way of inspiring funders to understand and appreciate what NGOs are trying to convey in their messaging. In terms of relationship building, up to 65% of NGOs are involved in partnerships, not just with funders, with public sector organizations, private sector bodies, as well as charities like themselves. And of course, this is as a result of building trust and confidence. And finally, 40 to 50% of all NGOs are looking at how to identify themselves professionally. So they're looking at branding, logo, they are looking at image and reputation, how they see themselves within their communities, in the context of the countries they represent, and in fact, the global representation that they have. So, this particular link that we have here, this particular slide suggests that if we want to improve visibility, we have to make sure that we have a range of presence on the different platforms in order to identify ourselves in relation to our reputation and image. Like every media institution, like every media organization, like every channel of communication, we need to understand our audiences. How do we go about doing that? What is the process? What is the system? Is there a set of procedures that we use? Well, simply put, we have to first of all look at how we target the message, how we use that message in terms of the resources of people and channels of communication, how we build our relationships, and how we use those relationships to convert the rates of feedback that we have from time to time. And so this particular slide suggests that targeting the message is important. And one example is an NGO youth organization that decided to use TikTok to craft their messages for under 20s or young people between the ages of 15 and 19. And as far as they're concerned, the reason why they used that was to increase the level of impact for their messages. They had video shares, of course, likes, etc. And they also tried to involve teenagers in volunteering. So this is one particular message or medium that was used to engage young people. In relation to resource efficiency, one charity that was focusing on elders or seniors or older people decided to email newsletters through Instagram. Now, we know Instagram is more a pictorial or photographic platform, but yet they were able to use newsletters. Obviously, the newsletters had photographs as well. And the reason why they decided to do that was to engage with older people so that they can develop trust and confidence. But in doing so, they were able to reduce the number of resources they would have used through print material or physical material, and in fact using social media. And by extension, they were able to influence older people to use social media platforms as well. In relation to building or boosting relationships, a particular not-for-profit organization that was involved in mental well-being decided to host what is called listening circles. Now, listening circles are also described in social care as talking therapy, where you sit and you listen to older people or people with mental health and other psychological issues talking about their concerns. And in doing that, you can also build relationships, you can understand the issues they're facing, and also find practical solutions. And so this mental health charity decided to use what is called listening circles or talk therapy. And in doing so, they were able to increase trust and confidence in the needs of beneficiaries. And finally, an animal rescue organization, whether it's dealing with dogs, cats, or other animals, was able to create a sponsorship path using social media to increase their percentage of profits or contributions by 30%. The point I'm making is that understanding your audiences, ladies and gentlemen, is crucial, if not critical, for media visibility. Every time we are asked to compose or compile or devise an application, usually the funder in question would ask us to present a story. So, for example, what is the name of your organization? So you have to start in a storytelling way, giving the name of the organization, when it was established, its aims and objectives or its mission. And then, of course, you continue the storytelling by explaining in very simple language, what is your project? Is your project to do with apprenticeships, internships? Is it to do with elderly care? Is it to do with agricultural development within a deprived area in a city or a suburb? And so, whatever project or venture you come up with, it needs to have a story. And that story has to be appealing. In other words, it has to be catchy. You have to frame it well. In other words, you have to structure your application in such a way that it reads well, it is personable, it's relatable, but it is also professional. And of course, you need to have information and data that are accurate, verifiable, reliable, consistent, and more importantly, factual. So even though it is data driven, sometimes referred to as data analytics, we have to make sure that the numbers add up, as we say in accounting language. And of course, if we are creating a story, there must be a passion. We need to put our emotions into it. And so words, for example, or phrases like, we have a passion for XYZ. We are driven. We are inspired. We have projects that are community led. Again, that's showing emotiveness and feeling. Or you can say our project rather than saying the project. Or we can even say the people's project or this community led project will lead to people being engaged, trusted, building confidence, improving social cohesion, cultural inclusivity, social kinship, and so on. All of these are not buzzwords, but they have emotional overtones. And then, of course, we are looking at things like innovation. Innovation simply means recreating something. So something is there and we recreate it. Why innovation is so important? Because innovation shows that we are authentic, we are original, and we want to put something together that engages the funder and excites them. and induces a decision from them. Of course, the story continues. We must have real customers. In other words, these are people who are, you've surveyed, you've researched, they have they have names, they have postcodes, they have genders. We look at their socioeconomic status, whether they are educated, low skilled, unemployed, whether they are disadvantaged, underserved. So all of those represents real customers. And then, of course, why the brand exists. Why is it that this story is so important? Why is it that you need to organize a health and social care seminar for young people and elders working together? And that is because they can share stories of their lives. They can talk about their circumstances, their situation, and the solutions they have found to deal with those circumstances from time to time. Of course, if we are telling a story, we must be consistent. That is something that many NGOs tend to ignore. Consistency. So, in your application, if you're talking about a particular venture, a particular program, you need to make sure that everything that you've said in that application follows through. From the design methodology of the program, the delivery of it, the assessment, the evaluation, the strategic plan of action, your environmental sustainability plan, all of those things need to link with your aims and objectives of your project. In other words, there must be a consistent pattern that is interwoven into your project. And then finally, lessons from failures. We call it object lessons. What have you learned from other projects? What are you trying to resolve? What are you trying to solve? What makes your project distinct from others? What makes it so different? So, crafting an application is really important. And the word authentic simply means original, something that, would catch the eyes and would certainly attract the minds of funders. So, your brand story is very important in relation to visibility. And now we are looking at the different tools and media channels that are used. And in this instance, we are looking at the kind of advantages that can lend themselves to students who are using digital platforms for study, for curriculum development, for understanding what is happening within the different areas of study and pedagogy as we know it. One of the reasons why digital tools are available for education at the moment, it's really to improve and enhance learning at the individual level, sometimes regarded or described as personalized learning. And so when a student, either from a college or university, or even from a secondary school or high school, decides to use a digital platform, he or she is engaging, he or she is interfacing with technology in order to learn. However, for that student to learn and improve his or her talent and abilities, students need to be familiar with the tools that they have. So, for example, if they're using ChatGPT, Gemini, Excel, Microsoft tools, and other technology platforms, they need to know exactly what these platforms, what service they provide, what is their purpose, the impact it will have on their learning. So it is not just using the tools, but trying to appreciate what these tools are for. Of course, social media platforms can also help teachers and parents to understand what their children are doing, what their families, their young families or young learners are doing. And it would also help teachers and parents to be more involved in the student learning process. Using digital tools also can improve the level of engagement between students and teachers or tutors. Because every time a student uses a platform, particularly if that platform is attached to a college or a university or an academy, you can actually trace or track the level of engagement by that student or students, but you could also look at the kind of progress that is taking place. Using digital tools also makes students more accountable. They become more responsible and responsive to different types of learning. Of course, it expands learning opportunities, it motivates students, and we hope that students, by using technology, they would be able to be more, they say clever here, but I would say they'll be more intelligent, they'll be more flexible and adaptive to different types of learning environments. So, using digital tools and media channels from a not for profit sector is important. And by using this example of students, we can see how and why and where these tools and channels can be used effectively and efficiently for not for profit organizations. A lot of studies have been done over the last 10 years on the kind of media agencies and organizations that NGOs use from time to time to impact on the level of leadership within and without the organization. This slide suggests that if NGOs are to be successful in strategic thinking and actions, they need to be able to understand how to use media, and they also need to understand how it impacts on their strategic level of thinking, which is also referred to as thought leadership. Leadership thought through, if you like. And so the first thing that an NGO needs to do is to define what is it they're trying to do. What is the message? What is that message? Who is that message going to? Who's going to benefit from that message? And having done that, which channel or platforms can be used to disseminate the message, to communicate the message? Because if the message is not communicated effectively and efficiently, well, then it would be useless or counterproductive for the NGO to be using a variety of media platforms. And then, of course, what goal are you trying to achieve? What is your objective? What is your end? What is the end result? Is it to become visible on, using blogs and YouTube and other social media coverage? What are you trying to achieve? And then, of course, having defined your goal, having spoken about it, what are the components? What are the requirements? What are the essentials? What are the ingredients for your media outreach? Are there press releases? These are press releases written for printed magazines and newsletters. Is it media kits like media education packs, tips, etc.? Is it talking to journalists and reporters in different newspapers and publications or online publications? Or is it just public relations kind of activities in order to have amplification on social media platforms? And what about engaging? What style of engagement would you use to make sure that your audiences are attracted to the message that you are putting out? Is it reactive? So, is it responding to a need by your beneficiaries? Is it something that you're promoting? Are you promoting a service? Are you promoting an event? Are you celebrating an anniversary of your NGO? Or are you initiating a project that you have been funded? Or are you campaigning on behalf of another charity? So again, the way you define your project, the way you objectify it, the way you analyze the different media channels, and the style in which you use to engage with the media would all have an impact or a desired effect. Building trust, it will certainly engage more donors. You could also enhance or increase your volunteering outputs. And more important, people will begin to understand the organization. They will know about the organization. They will talk about it because they can see it. You're visible. And then, of course, looking at fundraising initiatives, what is good for NGOs, why do you need to do that? Developing different models for thinking, bringing together focus groups, for example, outside of the NGO's purview to discuss how the organization can actually attract media. So this particular slide suggests that it is important to develop an approach that is effective and efficient to improve media engagement as well as improving leadership thought and strategy within the NGOs organizations. Like everything else, partnerships are important. Without partnerships, NGOs cannot function in a way that is reflective of their mission and objectives. And so you need to devise a number of partnerships. And we have come up here with a variety of partnerships, partnerships that have a corporate brand. So, for example, NGOs working with other organizations to launch their brand in a campaign to boost exposure. And then you're working with media organizations, radio, television, and social media outlets. Here is where you are actually sharing stories. You're talking about different initiatives you have to increase not just your credibility, but also to develop trust across media platforms. Other partnerships, of course, working with government departments. You would be working with local councils, municipalities, districts, neighborhoods, cooperatives, you know, and again, this is to provide you with some degree of visibility, authenticity, recognition. The more you are seen out there with different partners, the more you are recognized for who you are and what you represent. And, earlier we were talking about colleges and universities, you know, whether it is further education or higher education institutions, they are very important for collaborative work. And so, as an NGO or as NGOs, you should be working with these institutions because these institutions will impact on leadership. They will provide you with reputation and recognition, and of course, visibility. And then, of course, you have tech partnerships where you can actually partner with digital platforms to improve your efficiency in terms of online presence. This is where having a presence online that is consistent with your mission and objectives is so important. Of course, you have your NGO collaborative partnerships. This is where you work with similar organizations or organizations that have consistent missions and objectives similar to yours. And then you have individual people. They are influencers, they are persuaders, they are people who can make things happen, and they will certainly be part of social media. There are a number of people, for example, who have their own YouTube videos, people who have TikTok, as well as Instagram platforms, and they influence not just thought and behavior, but they can also influence activities within different communities. whether it's young people or professional people, sports individuals, and so on. And so this particular slide again shows how important partnerships are and how they should be focused on. We are coming towards the end of the presentation, and this slide suggests that if we are to understand a success, we have to be able to measure visibility. Measuring visibility, of course, is a very difficult undertaking by NGOs because unless you understand your audiences, as we said from the beginning, unless you understand who your audiences are, where they come from, what is their composition culturally, what is their situation economically, what is their status socially, which area they come from, the geographic location. Unless we understand all of these things, we would not be able to measure visible success. And so, in measuring visible success, we have looked at an example of not for profit startups and some of the metrics or data analytics they use to actually measure progress. And so, on the left side of your screen, we are looking at male and female individuals. We've done a head count, and we're saying that these people represent employees, they represent departments in businesses and professions, and we're also saying that they have certain characteristics. So, in terms of gender, we are saying that we have 48 males, that represents nearly 50%, and we have 34 females, which is just over a third. And then we use the salary analytics to point out where the percentage of people or the number of people are earning salaries either between 20 to 30K and 90 to 100K. So again, we are using numbers or figures to measure the success of these employees within business and industry. And as we've said correctly here, the male and female, 41% are employees who are females and 59% are males. And then on the right-hand side, we are looking at the number of departments and how many are involved in employee or employees development. And if we use this as an example, we can say, okay, how many NGOs are involved in supporting their members? How many NGOs are involved in selling a product? How many NGOs are involved in research and development? How many of them are involved in marketing? And the list goes on. And so, in order for us to understand whether or not we are succeeding as a charity or charities, we also need to develop measuring tools so that we can be able to track the success of our organization in visible terms. Ladies and gentlemen, today we looked at another important topic in relation to creating visibility for startups in the not-for-profit sector. We focused on why visibility matters, why is it important to understand your audience, what is the substance behind putting together a brand, a story, what type of tools and channels of media we should be using, why is it important to have a media outreach to improve our leadership potential, why should we be focusing on partnerships, how do we enhance them, how do we amplify them, how do we grow them, and then last but by no means least, we had a typical diagram showing how you can measure visibility success using an employee development chart. I hope that this presentation has been effective. And at this time, I would like to thank you very much for listening and open the platform for any questions that you wish to ask. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Christopher, for insightful presentation. Participants, now we are ready for questions. Please send in your questions so that we can discuss. Uh, Dr. Christopher, the first question is, which digital platforms do you recommend as the most impactful for visibility?
Yes, it's a very good question. I mean, lots of people are using WhatsApp for all kinds of things. They're using WhatsApp for and Telegram for emails. I've seen universities sending information material to WhatsApp. In my view, I don't think it's the best platform to use for that purpose. WhatsApp was really developed for personalized use, families, friends, acquaintances, probably professional networks. So I would score that out, and that is just my professional opinion. I would say Facebook is very would be widely is widely reputable, so to speak, or widely used, because on Facebook you have space um, and capacity to put information as well as photographs. You could also have a storyline. You could have your logo, and again, it's a massive platform that you can use, and that reaches so many people. You can also use LinkedIn. LinkedIn would help you to leverage professional support. You can engage with organizations and agencies, funders, public sector partners, private sector partners, other charities as well. So I would say if you want to create visibility, not for visibility's sake, but if you want to have an impact in relation to visibility as an NGO, I would suggest Facebook and LinkedIn. For young people, I would say possibly TikTok and Instagram. Again, they're for storytelling. So, a photograph speaks 1,000 words, so to speak. Um, but again, it depends on your audience. If you're dealing with elders, I would say use Facebook. If you're dealing with professional people, LinkedIn. And for young people, as I suggested, Instagram and possibly TikTok. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christopher, for your answer. The next question is, how can startups in the non-for-profit sector stand out when they have very limited resources?
Yes, I mean, it's a good question. And I think this is where collaborative partnership or collaborative partnering is important. And the slide that we looked at a while ago suggested that NGOs need to engage with a variety of partners. So if you are a fledgling NGO, which means that you've been set up only about 6 months to a year, if you're an existing NGO with a track record of 5 years, if you're an NGO that has been around for the last decade, your presence within the community, which implies visibility, and the way you operate, the way you function, the kind of service that you provide, all of which will determine the kind of support you will gain from different individuals. More or less, we tend to forget that one of the most precious resources in the world, whether it's a company, whether it's an NGO, government, is people. People are the most precious resources. So if you have people in your organization who are educated, experienced, skilled, competent, people who are dedicated and committed to your mission statement, it is likely that your organization will attract visibility. Because once you begin to engage with people at all levels of media engagement, whether it is your WhatsApp sending personal messages, whether it's you on Facebook or LinkedIn, or whether you are exchanging communication with government officials, those are very, very important points for engaging. So I don't always buy into the that perception or that view that because you don't have enough resources, you cannot engage with different organizations. We talk about style of engagement as well too. Your style has to be conciliatory. It has to be informative, not provocative, not confrontational. It has to be based on, look, this is what we have. This is what we are selling. This is what we want to buy into. And this is where funding applications will come in as well. Because if you don't have the resources, you can get startup funding for that particular purpose. So I hope I've been able to answer that resource question fairly adequately.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Yeah, thank
Well,
you. The next question is, how can we turn our social accounts visibility into attracting partners and donors?
yes, your social accounts, first of all, have to be clearly defined. What is it you are actually putting on your social account? Um, do you have, for example, a proper name of the organization? Is your mission very clearly defined? Are your objectives non-ambiguous, means that people can read it carefully? What photographs do you have? Now, people have a way of taking photographs from Google Stock, Shutterstock. In my view, that does not really bode well with the organization because you're telling people that you don't have sufficient resources to even demonstrate people. So if you're going to put users or beneficiaries on the platform, get their consent, get their permission. Ask them if you can put their photographs there. They may not want you to put their name, or they may give you a name that is anonymous. You can do that. But by all means, your social account should show real people, not customized people, but real people, actual customers. And information about events should be clearly defined. The name of the event, when the event will take place, and a brief summary, if you like, of the event. Don't just put, we have a fun fair on the 16th or the 18th of October 2027 in Uttar Pradesh or in Berlin or in Mecca or some other part of the world, and you don't define where the actual activity will take place, and why you having this activity or activities. And then, of course, on your social account, you should have success stories, testimonials. It could be a video capturing young people talking about the success of a project. It could be also what is called a podcast of a group of people talking about what they want to do with a particular project, how they want to be involved, how they want to be engaged. Those are some of the things you need to put on your social account. And also data. Data. How many service users are using your service? How many of them are benefiting from the service you use? What type of services do you have? And you break it down by percentages or percentile to show the impact of those services on your beneficiaries or service users. So your social account should not be there for personal amusement, but it should be there as a communication and information tool to attract donors, because that is what you're trying to do, and to attract other NGOs to work with you as well. And on your social account, you should also have uh, a particular aspect on your platform saying, we are looking for volunteers, we are looking for partners. Always make sure that you talk about engagement with people outside the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for your input. The next question is visibility more of what people notice and can see, or what attracts people interest in form of storytelling?
Visibility is not just about, in politics, there is something called optics. Optics means what people see, but not what they see, but what they perceive, what they think. Because sometimes, often, what they see is not what they believe in, and sometimes what they perceive is not what they actually understand. So, whatever visibility you have on your platform, as I mentioned just now, the photographs, the pictorials, the illustrations, the graphics must be real. Don't go to ChatGPT, Gemini, or these other AI tool platforms, take information there and put it there and then put your name to it. That is, in my view, intellectual pilfering. Use the people that you have within your organization to sell your story. We were talking about authentic branding stories. Use them to do that. Seek their permission. And stories are convincing, stories are appealing, stories attract others. We're not talking about gossiping here. We're talking about people revealing how a service has benefited them, in what way, what media attracted them. Was it Facebook? Was it LinkedIn? you know how do they use how have they been using the technology to access information from your organization? So visibility is both pictorial as well as narrative. And you don't have to use lengthy words or elongated sentences. You can use brief sentences. So for example, you can say, this picture shows a number of young people enjoying themselves at a seminar, or this picture shows a number of young women participating in a health related course, or this picture shows young people at a concert on drumming, playing the tabla or the tassa or the guitar or something like that. So you can use words, or you can combine words with pictorials to give what I would call a vivid description or illustration of what you're doing. And in themselves, they represent visibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for your input.
Yeah.
The next question is, what common mistakes do new nonprofits make when trying to create visibility?
The common mistakes, one would be not defining what is it they stand for. So you have a charity name or a company name, but your mission and objectives do not relate to that particular name. That's the first mistake, lack of proper definition. The second is your pictures on your photographs or illustrations are not reflective of or are not representative of what the organization stands for. That's the second mistake, because that itself is misleading your service users and your viewers. The third mistake is not understanding your audiences. So, for example, women audiences, who do they comprise of? Again, you have to break it down by socioeconomic characteristics. You have to look at geography. You have to look at personality features. You have women and girls. There are different categories. And then you come to elders, like myself, for example. Who are elders? Are they employed? Are they working? Are they just retirees? Are they pensioners? Understanding your audiences are very important. And that is one of the common mistakes of lots of charities. They don't understand their audiences sufficiently, because every person that uses your organization is not just a person, but they have so many personalities: social, economic, cultural, linguistic, religious, dialectic, vernacular. All of these characteristics of personalities embody an individual, plus their heritage, their ethnicity. So, if we are to avoid common mistakes, we have to make sure that one, our project is equivalent to the mission and objectives we have, the graphics and the words or the narrative that we compose on our platforms, even in our on our letterhead, our correspondence, they all convey a message of definitionality and clarity. And again, more importantly, understanding your audiences. Because if you do understand your audiences, half of the problem, uh, half of the problems are resolved. I hope I've answered that to the best of my ability.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah.
The next question is, how do we handle the part of consent when dealing with outdoor media content in a user-friendly way?
Yes, content is very important. Again, what type of content are we talking about? Is the content educative? Is it informational? Is it persuasive? So, educational content would be coming up with a new concept or a new idea of how to solve a health and social care problem. It could be how to develop better coaches within the community, either netball, football, or cricket or boxing. The other idea, of course, uh, could be looking at how we develop different ways of reporting. Do we use analytics? Do we use just raw data? Do we use public data? All of these things are important. And of course, who do we need to support that? Well, we need people. And so gaining consent from individuals is important. And there are very simple consent forms or permission forms, if you like. You might ask the person, do you want your photograph to be put on the website? How big should the photograph be? Are you looking for a passport size photograph or something expansive? Would you like your comments to be included in our evaluation strategy? Would you like us to include your comments in our application form? These are basic things that we can ask people for. And once we do that, we can then begin to create trust and confidence. Those are my pieces of advice I would give to that question, if you like.
Thank you, doctor. The last question for today is, which is better for visibility, social media or a website?
I think both are equally important.
Yes.
Yes, the website provides again an authentic version of the organization because it's coming from the organization itself. It also provides a channel for people to talk about it. You can have a blog as well. You can have a website where people can actually put data and information. They can share stories, but you could also have a social media website that is an adjunct or is aligned or coupled with your website as well. You can link the two. But I think having a dedicated website is far more effective because in your application, in your marketing materials or publicity materials, you can actually refer to that link of your website to funders and other media audiences. So both have advantages. I don't think there are many disadvantages really, because what you're looking for is a presence out there. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor, for your input. Participants, as now we have reached end of the webinar. I want to thank each one of you for taking your active participation. Please take a moment to fill out the feedback form for today's session. Your input is crucial in helping us to improve. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to contact us at support@fundsforNGOs.org. The feedback form will appear on your screen in a moment. I thank you, Dr. Christopher. for
You're
your
most welcome.
insightful presentation.
Yeah.
And
You're most welcome.
Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in our next webinars. Thank you, everyone.
You're most welcome. Yes. Bye-bye.